Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. It is Cave Week where we have been able to bring in some kits that we were able to collaborate with Free Spirit on to help bring the Cave Prism Classics to life. That is the collection. It's reorderable where we're able to get the entire rainbow all in one pre-cut. This one here that we're going to be highlighting today is Refraction. Now this was one of the very first patterns I designed. It's always a stunner, but it really isn't as hard as it looks. So what we're going to do is this star is made from one strip roll and a whole lot of background fabric. There are no Y seams, and we're strip piecing pretty much all of it. And it is so fun to do. I've done this in batiks, and then also we have it here in Cave, and it just is a stunner. And if you can arrange it so that you are going in color order, so that way like your first 3 strips are going to be your first centers here, and then you just work your way out from there until you have your blues on the outside. And I do recommend having your blues and your purples on the outside because that's going to coordinate and contrast very well with our really bold marigold yellow background. And we are using the Cave shot cottons for this. It's really beautiful woven fabric, and it has kind of a linen-y texture, but it quilts absolutely beautifully. And Shelly Moore did a fabulous job on ours. I highly recommend her if you want to send your quilts off. And this was just absolutely fantastic. I love it. So fun. All right, let's get into the tutorial. You got to give me a little grace on this one because this is like literally one of the first tutorials that we ever did where you're going to be watching this today. So make sure you check it out, have some fun, and don't forget we have kits available for Refraction. We've got the pattern available for Refraction, both in PDF and paper copy. And you can get all of that over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. If they're sold out by the time you get there, just join the wait list because these fabrics are reorderable. We can get more. And that gives us a good idea of how many people are interested and how much we need to get. So go check that out over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Now let's get into the tutorial.
Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make my brand new pattern, Refraction. This pattern is named for the phenomenon of what happens when light goes through a prism, where it turns into all those different colors. And you remember that from like 5th grade science class. I know I do. And I like it because it comes with this fabulous jelly roll from Majestic Batiks, and it has all these beautiful, beautiful colors. And that's what I was inspired by. So what this pattern looks like is it's this giant 6-pointed star that sort of goes out in color order. And we use a special triangle ruler to make these points really easy where there are no Y seams and hardly any points to match. So it really goes together really quickly. I made this thing in a day when I was getting ready for Quilt Market. Probably a more realistic time frame is like a weekend, or if you're going on a quilt retreat or something. That was a little bit of an insane day when I made it all at once. So I want to share a little bit about the story behind this quilt. So when I was getting ready for Quilt Market, Majestic Batiks owner sent me this jelly roll and some layer cakes and just a couple of different pre-cuts in the 2 new fabric lines that they had coming out. She said just do something pretty, and it's like, okay, that is 0 parameters. What do I do with this? And so the other items that she sent, I had some ideas right away for, but this jelly roll, I just did not know what to do with it. And so I was thinking and thinking and thinking, and then all of a sudden it just like popped in my brain. It knew what it wanted to be. And so this is a pattern that happened from it. So I'm going to show you how to make it, and you'll see how simple it is. And one of the things I really like about this pattern is it really allows your quilter to go nuts. And so I sent this off to Natalia Bonner. She's super talented, and she did an amazing job with this. I mean, she did feathers everywhere within the star and then also along the border. And I just couldn't even imagine her doing a better job, and she did it on a rush. So she did just an amazing, amazing job. So this is really something where you can hand it to your quilter and say, just give me your best work, make this beautiful, because there's a lot of negative space where they can really show off and really just have a showpiece for quilting as well as the design. So I really love it when those two elements can come together. So let's get started making refraction. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take this jelly roll apart. Isn't that the most fun part? And we need to arrange it in color order. And I've got kits online where you can get, if you love these fabrics as much as I do, you can go online, you can get the kit, and it has the entire jelly roll and the black batik. And that's nice. I've used batiks with like a regular cotton black from another fabric manufacturer, and I actually prefer working with the batik because the feel of the material is the same. It's not like one's a little thicker or thinner than the other, so it really sews together really nicely and makes for really nice flat seams, which is always a good thing. Alright, so these are not in color order yet, so we need to get them in color order in sets of 3. So this would be the case if you were doing it for your own, for this jelly roll or any jelly roll. And so now I've got these all in order. So now I'm going to sew these strip sets into sets of 3. So I'm going to start with my orange. Now whenever I sew strip sets, I always set my machine to a scant 1/4 inch stitch. That's just because I know that sometimes I can get lazy on those long seams and then they're off a little bit. So this just helps keep me from being my own worst enemy when it comes to accurate piecing. So this is really simple. So I've already got these right sides together because that's kind of how they came off the roll. Just line up my sides here. I can start sewing down. Every once in a while I kind of line that up again, make sure that my edges are still even. Going all the way down the strip. Alright, I made it all the way to the end. I'll go ahead and cut that off. And now I'm going to sew my third one onto the other side. And the one thing I'm making sure I'm doing is making sure that I'm kind of going in that ombre pattern. So this strip is lightest of the 3. So I'm going to make sure I sew it to the sort of medium orange, not the dark orange, because that will make a difference in our final pattern and design. Alright, my first strip piece is set. Only like a million more to go. Actually, not really. It's like 12 more to go. But, so you're going to want to keep doing this for all of your blocks. I don't even press at this point. I wait and do it all at the end. So what I would do at this point is just grab it, lay it as flat as it can be without the seams pressed open, and just get going on the next one. So the next one for me is going to be these yellow guys because we're going in color order today. So I'm going to get going on these. You keep going along on your jelly rolls, sewing them into sets of 3, and then we'll come back once everybody's got their strips sewn and we'll press them. Okay, so I finished sewing my last strip set. I have them all ready to be pressed, and for this one I like to press them open. That really makes for a really nice flat construction at the end. So whenever I'm sewing strip sets, I like to press them open. I find that it helps them lay super flat, which really helps when I'm cutting them apart and when I'm quilting them, because then you have less seams that you have to deal with that are bulky when you're working with it on the sewing machine, and that always helps. And even if you're not the one quilting them, your quilter will appreciate that. So just press these seams flat for all of your strip sets. So I've got all my strips pressed nice and flat. Now it's time to cut them into equilateral triangles. So to do this, I have an clear ruler. It is 60-degree acrylic ruler. If you have one already, you just need one there where you can cut a 6.5-inch equilateral triangle from. If you don't have one, I've got them on shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. So you can pick up the kits, you can pick up the pattern, and you can pick up the ruler. So one-stop shopping. I try to make it easy for you all. So I'm going to go ahead and open this baby up, and we are going to do the fun part, which is cutting everything apart. Okay, so if you've sewn this right, then you're going to have 6.5 inches from your top to your bottom. If that's not the case, just try to make sure you cut everything so it's nice and equal. But what I'm doing here is I'm just lining up my 6.5-inch mark along the bottom edge, and I'm making sure that my top is also in line with the top there. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the side and then cut down the side here. So I have one right here so far, and you'll notice this dark orange is on the bottom. So now if I flip this around to cut my second one, now my light orange is going to be on that nice long strip. So you're going to want to make sure you pay attention to that as you're doing this pattern, because you're going to have two stacks. You're going to have one where the one side of the fabric is going to be on the bottom, and another one it's just going to be in this little tip, and your centerpiece is always going to be the same width. So go ahead and do that for all your strips. Make 2 separate piles for each, and that gives you variety when you're putting it together. So go ahead and keep cutting. So now this block goes together a little bit differently than your standard piecing. What we're going to do is put it together on the diagonal, and this is going to be really good practice for when we put the entire quilt together, because that is also sewn together on the diagonal, just with much bigger triangles. So here's how it works. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to sew my diamonds together. Would help if my sewing machine was here. I just use a regular 1/4-inch stitch for this. All right. Get those points lined up. We can sew that together. Now when you're doing this quilt, you can go ahead and just stack a whole bunch of these together and get them arranged the way you want, and just chain piece these guys, and that will save you a lot of time. For this video, I'm just doing the one corner or one triangle at a time here. It's not really a corner. Alright, so we've got these diamonds together now. I need to press these, and then I'm going to sew my diamonds together and then my diamond to this little triangle here to make my first row. And so the row we're putting together on the diagonal. So there's these little dog ears here where the points are sticking out. I leave those on because when I flip these together, that gives me something for my point to align to, because it fits right perfectly with that dog ear on both sides. So don't cut those off, leave them in place. Those dog ears also give you a good idea of where your corner seam should start, because your needle should be coming into the block and coming out at the same spot where like the dip in that dog ear is. So where that little valley is between where the large triangle and the little dog ear triangle meet, that's where you want your needle to be. that is a perfect 1/4 inch seam. And you'll notice I'm not pinning, and that's because you really don't need to with this quilt. There aren't seams that match up like a traditional quilt, so it really works out quite well. They're actually a little bit offset, which is great. So we have maybe about a 1/4 inch between where these seams come together, and so it's no biggie to worry about. All right, so I've got that together. I'm gonna go ahead and sew my final little triangle on here before I press. I told you this was fast. All right, so we have our first row together. Go ahead and press those seams open. I'm gonna go ahead and get going on my second row, which is just 3 pieces, so really fast. So the pros make mistakes too. The blue is supposed to be sewn to the green. So I'm going to pull that out and redo it. So if you've watched it and then all of a sudden we cut to another scene and it's in the right spot, that's why I made a mistake. Okay, so there is just one pin that you should use at this next part. So what you want to do here is you want to flip this together. And you want to stick a pin right where all these points come together. Like that in the back, and then you want to do it again in the front where all the points come together for your second row here. Alright, so I've got that there, and what I do is I just pinch this and then I stick a pin over the top of it, because if you were to wiggle that pin around, then you're going to move things about and then your points aren't going to be perfect anymore. Alright, so I'm lining those dog ears up again. That should give me a nice flat side to work with this triangle. Now for this one I sew until I get into that seam line, and then once that needle's down, then I remove the pin. And that helps make sure that everything stays where I want it to be until the last possible second. Alright, I'm lining up those dog ears in the back as well. So that's kind of my guide to make sure I'm on track here. Alright, so we've sewn the second row to the large row. This row doesn't need any pinning because we're just going to line up those dog ears again. So super simple. Part of what makes this quilt so fast is we use some of the big things that make quilts go quickly. We use strip piecing to get those, create that variety without having to cut a million little pieces out of templates. We're using big pieces. These things are 6.5 inches once we cut them down. And you can chain piece your big triangles together to save time as well. So that is what the 3 tips that'll really help this quilt go super fast for you at home. That's it. I've got my triangle together. I'm going to go ahead and press these seams open, and then I'm going to show you how to attach the big triangle to it. For the background, it basically is the exact same process of what we just did with the little ones, just it's a bigger triangle. So I'll show you how to do that next. So we have a black triangle that I've cut out that's the exact same size as our piece triangle that we put together. And those instructions are in the pattern that goes along with this. It's called Refraction. So check that out on shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com, and you can get your pattern, you can get your kit, you can get the ruler. And this is just a beautiful, rich, solid black teak that feels the same and is the same weight as the fabric. So it really goes together real nicely. It lays nice and smooth. So basically this is the exact same. I'm just going to, it's going to sit off to the side here when it's all pieced together. So I don't really even have to pin this. I can just match my corners up, take it over to the sewing machine, and sew it through. So I'm going to show you a little tip here. If you sew with your piece triangle up, then you can ensure that you have perfect points all the way through without needing to pin anything. So let me show you how to do that. So you just sew along like normal. Now, if you remember the one time we actually pinned for this, we pinned right where all those 3 points come together. So as I'm coming up to where that happens again here, I haven't pinned, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my needle is coming just to the right of where those 3 points match. So I'll do a little close-up so you guys can see kind of what that looks like. I'm going to do another one of those points, so I'm slowing down. So just to the right of where those 3 points come together. And here we go. It's all together. Actually, it'll go this way, probably in the end. And you can see that these points are just perfect because we sewed just to the right of where those points come together. And that's the trick. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I really love this quilt. It really is pretty and it really is fast. So those are 2 things that I really like in a quilt. I hope you use this video tutorial to make one of your own. Remember, there are patterns available at quiltaddictsanonymous.com, and you may be able to get them in your local quilt shop now. They're starting to ship out to quilt shops around the country. But otherwise, you can always get them at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. I've got kits. So if you really like this jelly roll, you really like the way the quilt looks in the photos, then you can get the kit. And if you need the ruler, you can get the ruler. And again, this is a really one that you can send off to your long armor and say, have fun. Natalia Bonner did mine, and she just did a fabulous, fabulous job. And I'll make sure to share some of those close-ups of the quilting she did, because she really went above and beyond, did a fabulous job, better than I could have ever accomplished on my own, and really highlighted the negative space in the quilt and also those points that we actually didn't work too hard to put together, but it looks like we did. So thanks for following along, and happy quilting!